Well, I don't know too much about the masters over in India, but I did read the book that was called The Life and History of the, what was his name, dear? The one that flew in the sky. And Milarepa. And it was a very, very interesting, because I believe he was from India, and how he started out trying to learn from all the gurus in India and the different masters, and it was like, it was literally like pulling teeth to get any information out of the masters about life. And this particular case, like he had to build a castle, like a wall that was like 30 or 40 feet high, and then he had to build a house and a whole bunch of other things, and he had to go do all these menial labor things to gain entrance to sit in the court of these masters' houses, and then when he got to the point of actually making connections, it cost him priceless jewels of money to even get to sit in the presence of these masters. It was such a huge secret. It was almost like a caste system that if you were a master, you didn't let anybody. And it seemed to me, after reading that book about the history of what he went through, that some of these masters went to their deathbed without even sharing the knowledge that they had. Do you have any, Duane, do you have any comments about what I saw in that book?
Well, I didn't read the book, Bob, but again, there's always something more to life than we can see, right? So we're all discovering that. And there's a true reality to life, and it's really very simple, but then again, to recognize it, but the reason why these individuals did what they did, well, again, it's choice. When the real guides come up and they give us experiences or whatever, they have free will too. They make that choice. They decide their adventure. And so this is just how it is. So, these individuals, everybody's brought up a particular way, and they do things their own way, however it is for that time. Or they see that people aren't ready. Again, lots of times people use these things for personal gain or personal power to rule over others, so they many times see that with the individual, so they don't give them nothing. It's different with everybody. Today, the master guru idea and all this knowledge and information, it's more of a business is what it is, because it's a business world. And so what we're doing is we're just sharing the reality of what's going on simply because of what's taking place on the earth. The earth is in a huge demise that people are agreeing to unconsciously, and they don't see it. And so this is why this is brought out at this time, to give people this advantage to wake up, or they'll be going into future lives which are a lot worse. So whatever's going on over there with others, if they want their secrets, that's fine. So the real guides are providing, this knowledge, this reference to the true reality right now. This is what I was shown to present, because I could see it for what it was at the time, and then surpass what I had been through also to get ready for this. So this new nowness of the all is it's not easily understood. It's very simple, but at the same time, it takes a lot of reference, a lot of knowledge to get the basic idea, to have comparisons, because we've all been brought up in creation, and creation is huge, but we need creation to go through this process to eventually compare and recognize what is real and recognize what isn't real, from creation into the real universes. So this is a big step for people, but it's at a time when they can decide to take the risk and see what we're sharing, or just continue on with what they've been doing, and things will be the same, and they'll just grow old and forget they were here. So it's a choice. We're providing that cool opportunity, but it's a big step. It'll take you the rest of your life, or maybe into lifetimes. But once you focus on the real guidance and just pay attention more so than just your personal life, well, then things happen for the better. It's a real benefit overall, as opposed to being limited and unaware and just keep going through embodiments. So everybody has the choice. So we provide the real opportunity now.
Well, that's what I find so wonderful is that, I mean, you're freely offering it. You're giving all this information that people are searching for, and it's freely available. All people have to do is just tune in and go with it. And Sandy and I are sharing this as much as we can in the physical with people, and we do find that there's a lot of people that are really accepting what we're saying. We're handing out books, cards, New You cards that we're doing, and there's a lot of people that are really searching for the truth, and then there's the other people that you interested in learning more about life? Nope, I got it all figured out. I don't want to hear one word that you have to say. So, but the opportunity is just so magnanimous compared to at least like the caste system in India, where everything's a secret, and I don't know why that they want to keep it a secret from everybody. Was there anybody else that wants to add anything? Any more commentary?
Hi, this is Tim in Oregon. I was just thinking about what Claudia was mentioning about switching over to electric cars rather than the fossil fuel cars. And there, too, in this science stuff, if you get millions of these electric cars, I think they have battery. Now you've got millions of old batteries to deal with environmentally, too. The materials in the batteries that wear out. So we have to be careful even when we think something is a better thing to use. It's like it's all in this scientific stuff, but that doesn't seem to, it's just a change. And then we find out, it wasn't a good idea after all, unless it was something that was already known, like Tesla being able to use magnetism and copper metal to make a coil and produce an energy that doesn't seem to have environmental effects.
I just heard an interesting comment when they down south when they grew the corn for the alcohol additive to put in the gasoline to save on the making of gasoline and fossil fuels. They destroyed many square miles of the bayous, and the Gulf of Mexico were totally polluted. The fish died, and it was just a horrible ecological disaster that was the result of making the alcohol to add that 10% that they add to gasoline. That is one of the biggest fiascos out there, and by the way, it took like 5 gallons of gasoline to make 1 gallon of gasohol, so of that alcohol. So what's wrong with that picture? Where's the logic in all that? That's another case of, does it make sense? No, it doesn't. There is one thing I could comment about the electric cars, however, is when I met that gentleman that ran that institute in Kiev, where he was doing all the real advanced science. There are two things that he developed in his research lab over there, and one was solar panels. And now this was from 1990. They were actually manufacturing these for governments. In 1990, they were manufacturing solar panels that would put out 3,000 watts of power even on a dark, moonless night. So they would work day and night, and 1 square meter, just take a yardstick by a yardstick, 1 square meter would put out 3,000 watts. That's equivalent to 3 horsepower. And a lot of these smaller cars, even ramped up, don't use more than 30 horsepower. So, you could drive a small car around the country with just a few of these solar panels. The other thing that they invented and developed was they were able to make carbon strings where you could take carbon atoms and connect them so that it was like a thread, kind of like a spider's web string. They could take individual carbon atoms and string them like a single thread. And once they developed that technology, they were able to weave these carbon patterns and make what is called an electric capacitor. I don't know if anybody knows what a capacitor is, but a capacitor is an electronic device for storing electrical energy. And one of the things that they developed was one capacitor that was the size of a cigarette pack. How small a cigarette pack is, like a pack of Winston's. A capacitor that size could hold 1 farad of electrical capacity. Now, for 1 farad, for anybody that doesn't know how much a farad is, a farad would be the electrical capacity to store energy the size of a football field. If you had 2 plates the size of a football field, put about a quarter or half an inch apart, and a dielectric of air or some other dielectric in between those 2 plates, that's how much capacity 1 farad of energy storage is. And that was just one of the things they developed. Now, my thinking is down the road, if you would use solar panels, which have no pollution, once they're developed, there might be a little bit of pollution in the manufacturing process. And then instead of using all these different fancy batteries like the Tesla battery, which is only good for about 10 years, I understand, use capacitors to store the energy. And just as an idea, in 1990, I don't know if any of you guys had a cell phone. Remember those Motorola cell phones that you would carry around that were about the size of a brick? They'd weigh about 2 pounds, and they had an antenna, and then on the back it had a sliding battery pack. And that, if you they had 2 different sizes of battery packs. One was like a quarter inch, and the other one was like an inch thick. The heavy duty battery pack on those phones would allow you to talk for like 4 or 6 hours. Now, just to give you an idea of the capacity of one of these farad capacitors for storing energy, they could make the battery alternatives, and they were actually manufacturing these in 1990, that if you had your Motorola phone that would only work for 4 to 6 hours on one of those battery charges, their capacitive electrical storage would run one of those telephones for you could talk 24/7 for 20 years before you had to recharge it. Now, if you apply that technology to automobiles and cars and that sort of thing, you have solar panels, you charge up your capacitors, there's no pollution, they're reusable basically for life, forever, and you just have to recharge them every 10 or 20 years or whatever. Now, if you're using as much energy as an automobile, you might have to charge it once a month or something like that. That's how much energy these things can store. So I just thought that was kind of interesting technology that hope to see down the road. Of course, it hasn't made it to the public arena yet, but the military uses it. They use it on all their space satellites and all that kind of technology. So there's stuff out there that would that we could use that would really save the planet from the fossil fuel end of things.
You were mentioning the military uses or knows of that stuff. That's all this science stuff seems to lead to. That the powers that be, even though we think these are beneficial things for the Earth, just like in Atlantean times when they developed their science, and whether they put up a giant magnifying glass in space and aimed the beam wherever they wanted, they had all the energy from the sun free, but anywhere they could aim that beam was a death ray and it would disintegrate.
Yep, that was the James Bond movie with Roger Moore on that island. Yep, they made a movie out of that with James Bond.
Yeah, that's what I see is this science that all leads to the powers that be getting their hands on it to just control the human slaves with more power.
Well,
all these material things.
Yep, the only way they want to spend money on technology is how to control people and keep them, under their thumb. You're absolutely right. I agree with that. When are they going to come up things for public use?
Yeah, even like this atomic energy. Right now, we're hearing that Pakistan and India are having their violent attitude, and they have their atomic weapons, and if they fire them off, then the rest of the world is affected by their scientific technology and those that are in control of those powers. Because that's all it takes to poison all the air so that just about all the living things on Earth don't get to be in this psych realm anymore.
Yeah, I have a question for you. You know about the directed energy weapons they used on the World Trade Center? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've seen information about that and the fires in Northern California, and it's just another form that could be.
Well, my question is, even though they're using that directed energy weapons for bad things, you would think that technology could also be used to, if somebody launched a nuclear missile at the United States, that they could use that technology to disintegrate the atomic missile into just dust before it could do any damage or explode. And also another use for that directed energy technology is, how they could take houses and big buildings with concrete and steel and just reduce it to dust.
Yeah.
The other thing they could use it for is to get rid of all the pollution. You've probably seen those special shows where they have buildings the size of a super Walmart just baled up of plastic that they're trying to ship off to China used to accept it and take care of it, but China no longer accepts barge loads or tanker-size ships full of that recycled plastic. So a lot of the companies are forcing it on small countries like Vietnam and Laos and those countries, and they're being forced to take these huge quantities of that unusable plastic. But if you went in there with this directed energy weapon and shined it on all that plastic, you could reduce it to dust and get rid of the pollution. If they could get that directed energy to work underwater out in the Pacific Ocean, you could get rid of all that horrible plastic that's destroying the environment in the Pacific Ocean. So, wouldn't it be nice if they would turn that technology and start using it for good?
Yeah, if there was a way to not deflect those beams and things too, and then you're affecting the living things in the ocean too by the energy they're not used to in the water.
Well, yeah, but if you could direct it safely, what I'm saying is if you could safely direct that energy without destroying the water and water life environment. Like as an example, what I'm saying is when they use those directed energy weapons on the houses in California, they did absolutely no damage to the green trees. The trees were undamaged. So they do have ability to protect some of the environment when they did it. All the trees and the arboretums around the World Trade Centers when they collapsed, all the trees that were standing next to the buildings were undamaged. So there's a lot more to it. By the way, I learned something interesting this last week about the World Trade Center. They said that the fires were so hot that after the buildings collapsed, the steel beams were still smoldering, and they were burning real hot, and that the workers couldn't get in. Like for weeks after the buildings collapsed, it was so hot that they couldn't put the fires out. There was just fumes coming out of the rubble, and it was so hot that the beams got so hot from the burning fuel fires from the aviation fuel on the airliners that they were red hot, and they were just going to keep burning and burning and burning for weeks after the collapse of the buildings. Well, the truth of the matter is there was no heat, absolutely no heat in the collapsed rubble of the World Trade Center. What it was, and this is kind of interesting, and I don't understand it, a lot of the mainstream engineers and scientists that have studied the wreckage don't understand it. But what seems to have happened is since the directed energy beams used a form of molecular disintegration to disintegrate the buildings and turn them to dust, well, what was interesting is all that matter that collapsed and the matter that collapsed and actually remained in the rubble, a lot of it just blew away in the wind as dust. But the part that actually settled to the ground, the parts of matter that were not completely destroyed, continued to disintegrate for weeks and weeks and weeks after the collapse of the towers. And there was no structural integrity to the matter. Some of the salvage companies tried to reuse some of the steel beams, and as soon as they started to use them, they'd put them up, it'd be real solid, and then a week later it would lose its structural strength. So a lot of that fuming was simply caused by the material continuing to disintegrate at the atomic and molecular level. So I just thought that was interesting.
It seems like it would be a much more enjoyable planet to live on if there wasn't these scientific technologies at all, to me.
Everybody can do the new you all at once. Together. We'll do it all together, and we'll end the show here. And so in 10 seconds, I'll give you a countdown. 10 seconds. You can unmute your phones, and we'll all do a new you together, and then we'll call it a day for the show. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. New you. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for participating in the show.